Now, Sorry.
No, go on. You first.
Now, GDP figures have, just in the last few moments, been released. The UK economy shrank in March, but still achieved growth in the first quarter of this year. While new data from the Office for National Statistics shows that UK GDP fell by 0.3% in March, which is worse than some economists anticipated.
Are you confused yet? Yeah. The Bank of England, of course, raised interest rates 4.5% yesterday. So what does all of this mean for the UK economy? Thankfully, someone who can make sense of these very confusing figures is former advisor to the Bank of England and the UK Treasury, Dr. Roger Gewolb, who's here. Good to see you, Roger.
Good morning.
As always. So
Good morning.
What do you make of all of these figures? I mean, the fact that the quarter up till March, or till the end of March, we grew by 0.1%. Is that a good thing?
Well, yeah, it's a positive thing, of course, Stephen. But, I mean, these are very small figures, mostly of interest to economists and people who build the business models for our economy and our national debt calculations. But they don't really affect you and me very much on a daily basis. It's interesting to know, but I think they are figures which are at least moving very slightly in the right direction.
Very slightly in the right direction, but did fall by 0.3% in March, even though the overall picture is it grew in the first quarter. So what happened in March?
I think the services sector fell. I'm just looking at the figures which has just come in. It fell by 0.5%, and that was the main contributor to the fall. But these monthly figures are not all that meaningful because, of course, it's only a period of 4 weeks, and it then can reverse the next month as it has. That's why the quarterly figures are more meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, can we take anything from the individual sectors? Output in consumer-facing services fell by 0.8%, production output grew by 0.7%, construction sector grew by 0.2%, all this in March. Do we take anything from these individual sectors or not?
I don't personally. I want to look at a longer period, at least a 12-month graph, to see what trends are really emerging. A couple of large construction companies might have had some new contracts come in and that boost them for a period. You know, I think it's too short term to draw any huge conclusions.
But in terms of, you say, heading in the right direction, is this all tied with, I mean, inflation is supposedly falling. Interest rates went up yesterday, but were sort of advised that could be the last rise for a while. Is that all positive in and of itself?
Well, no, I don't think the interest rate rises are positive. The GDP growth and the even small increments being positive is, of course, good news rather than it being the other way. But I think the biggest, I mean, it's interesting to look at the news this morning and the Twitter feed. Things do seem to be unraveling a bit, as you said. And certainly in those areas where I have some expertise, as the lawyer you heard said, a lot of the problems that we have could be resolved, you know, in an afternoon or a week, and for some reason they never seem to be. But the biggest problem is the interest rate rises, which I personally have been saying for a year never should have happened.
Yeah, because there was some controversy about that. On the front page, I think it's the Financial Times this morning, you can see Andrew Bailey looking visibly quite stressed. Obviously, you don't think it was the right decision?
No, you cannot fight the type of inflation that we have in the UK by raising interest rates. Very, very simply, the inflation is coming from food and energy. You can't stop eating and you can't stop heating. It isn't consumer spending. Crushing people with increasing amounts of debt burden is not going to stop that. And they just persist. The dots are starting to connect now. People are starting to talk about Rishi and his government, you know, rolling back on various promises, possibly over-promises. Now this morning they're saying, well, gosh, you know, maybe the fight against inflation isn't working. Maybe the interest rates aren't working. Well, you know, many people could have told them that a very long time ago. And to put it in perspective, I just asked myself, if a football manager lost 12 consecutive games, you know, totally, would they not be escorted off the pitch?
Well, you do. I mean, do you think then, if you think the dots are being joined somewhat, Do you think we're heading to a point where actually we could start to see the interest rates being rolled back, even though they are just at what we'd consider normal levels 10 years ago?
Well, we have the kind of inflation that falls by itself. In 2009, we had a similar situation. The then leadership of the Bank of England didn't touch interest rates. They left them at 0.5% for 3 years, and the inflation cost push, it's called, disappeared by itself. It's scheduled to go down to 2 or 3% next winter. No credit to any of all these folks who are claiming credit for it. It's happening in 10, 12 other countries as well. At that point, yes, Stephen, I mean, they'll absolutely have to reduce interest rates.
Roger, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.